Cher's voice is one that everyone knows. It's strong, powerful, and you can tell it's her the second you hear it. But behind all the fancy costumes, the big concert performances, and the famous superstar personality, there's something most fans never knew about. Her whole life has been filled with deep feelings and experiences that built up over many, many years. And a lot of that was shaped by the men she fell in love with. Even though Cher has earned tons of respect during her 50-year career in music, movies, and TV shows, there are 7 special men she's been romantic with who changed her life and her art in really big ways. Some of these men gave her amazing memories that she turned into songs. Other men broke her heart, and that sadness helped her give her best performances ever. And some other men gave her smart conversations and artistic ideas that made her want to grow and change as a person. She's never told everyone who all these men were until right now. She never sat down before and told these complete stories from beginning to end. Now that she's 79 years old, she's finally ready to talk openly about the relationships that really mattered to her. She wants to talk about the men who touched her life in meaningful ways. And when you find out who these 7 men are, you'll never listen to her music the same way ever again. You'll finally understand the real stories that inspired her songs. Let's begin with the rock star who changed everything in her life forever. Greg Allman, the musician who gave her a second chance. Cher was at the very top of her success when she first met Greg. He was the emotional lead singer of the Allman Brothers Band, which was a really famous rock group. Greg was rough around the edges, real, and incredibly talented. He had all the qualities that Cher found impossible to resist. Greg had this wild, free spirit that only the truly great musicians seem to have. He wasn't smooth or fake like some corporate pop star. He was completely genuine and authentic, and in a world full of people pretending to be something they're not, that realness was like a drug to Cher. It pulled her in. They connected with each other on a level that was about way more than just physical attraction. It was really about the music itself, and about understanding what it's like to be an artist in an industry that can be super cruel and unforgiving. Greg looked at her not as this huge famous icon, but as a regular woman who had feelings, someone who was vulnerable and talented in her own special way. They got married in 1975, and for a brief moment, it felt like the whole world just stopped and held its breath. Nobody thought it would work out at all. A rough rock god and the shiny, happy Sunny and Cher powerhouse getting together. It seemed crazy. But somehow, in its own messy and chaotic way, it actually did work for a little while. The marriage only lasted 9 days total. That's a fact that has become super famous Hollywood trivia that people repeat over and over and even make jokes about. But what most people didn't get or understand was that those 9 short days held more real connection and true intimacy than a lot of relationships that go on for years and years, sometimes even decades. Greg was fighting with addiction problems and demons inside his head. He was trying hard to manage all the turmoil and pain he felt inside. And Cher was struggling too, dealing with always being defined by her past relationship with Sunny, and dealing with what other people expected from her all the time. The age difference between them and the way their lifestyles clashed were totally real problems. They were really and truly incompatible in fundamental ways. But the love they felt for each other was absolutely real too. It was undeniably genuine and true. People close to them say that Cher and Greg kept their affection for each other even after they broke up. There was no anger or bitterness or bad feelings between them. Friends remember Cher saying that being with Greg felt like being truly understood for maybe the very first time in her entire life. She felt really seen as an actual person instead of just an image or a celebrity. Many years later, when reporters asked Cher about Greg in interviews, you could see her eyes get soft and gentle right away. She never, ever said one single bad word about him. Even though the gossip magazines wanted drama and scandal and fighting, she stayed loyal to his memory. The way she talked about him said so much about their connection and what it meant to her personally. What she shared with Greg was pure and simple and uncomplicated. It was a special moment when two artists found comfort and peace in each other before the world, and all its demands and responsibilities pulled them away from each other. He taught her something really important, that showing your vulnerable side wasn't being weak. Actually, it was the truest and most honest form of being strong. He showed her that real artists live right on the edge of danger. They dance with their demons and problems. They burn super bright and brilliant for short moments instead of just flickering dimly and safely for decades and decades. And even though their marriage only lasted 9 days, the impact it had on her lasted forever and ever. It kept echoing through her whole life like a bell that never stops ringing. When Greg passed away and died in 2017, Cher was clearly shaken up and very emotional about it. She understood something that most regular people would never understand. Those brief moments of really intense connection with another person often define who we are and shape us way more than years and years of comfortable but boring mediocrity ever could. In interviews after he died, she thought back on that short marriage with clear affection and love. She never said she regretted it, not even once. She only felt grateful and thankful for what they had shared together. Val Kilmer, the actor who showed her a different kind of love. Then there was Val Kilmer. And he was magnetic in ways that are really hard to put into words or capture on paper. Cher met Val during the time when she was focused on acting. This was when she was stretching herself beyond just making music and trying to prove to everyone that she was a serious performer who could really act. This was a vulnerable and scary time for her. It was a period when critics and reviewers kept questioning whether she could truly act or if she was just a singer playing dress-up and pretending. Val had this dangerous kind of charm about him. He had a brooding, dark intensity that women found totally captivating and irresistible. He was talented, ambitious, and he wasn't afraid at all to take risks by choosing complex and difficult roles. These were all things that Cher really respected in another artist. The connection between them was immediate and electric, like lightning. It was the kind of chemistry that other people notice from all the way across crowded rooms. Unlike Greg, who was all about music, Val represented the acting world, and the acting world was something Cher desperately wanted to conquer and be taken seriously in. Val saw her potential as a real actress, not just as a singer who was trying something new. He believed in her abilities when most of the industry was skeptical and doubtful about whether she could do it. They had something between them that was less about music and more about art in general. It was about two performers who understood each other's hunger and drive. They understood each other's deep need to be recognized and respected as serious artists who mattered. People who worked on movie sets with them noticed the chemistry they had. They saw the way Cher and Val seemed to orbit around each other during breaks and downtime. It was intense and brief, but completely unforgettable for both of them. They shared private moments together away from all the cameras where they talked about acting roles, acting techniques, and the vulnerability and openness you need to truly become a character and inhabit them. Val later went on to have his own complicated romantic history with other people, but when reporters asked him about Cher years later in interviews, he always spoke with respect and fondness. He called her fearless, and that word stuck with her really deeply. It meant a lot to her. Their time together was passionate, but in the end, it didn't last very long. It was transient, like two shooting stars passing each other in the dark night sky. Val moved on to other actresses, other loves, and other artistic pursuits all around the world. But Cher carried something important from him that stayed with her. It was a belief that she could transition and move between different worlds. She wasn't trapped or confined to just one identity or one medium or one thing. That gift, that validation and approval, stayed with her through every single role she took after that, through every artistic challenge she faced. Years and years later, when she had achieved really big success in both music and film, she would think back to Val's encouragement during those vulnerable early acting days when she was scared and unsure. He had believed in her before anyone else in Hollywood did. He saw something in her. It wasn't a love story that ended in marriage or a lasting partnership that went on forever, but it was a catalyst, like a spark that starts something bigger. It was an awakening of something inside her. It was one of those relationships that exists mainly to teach you something essential and important about yourself. To crack you open like an egg and show you possibilities and potential you didn't even know existed inside you. Tom Cruise, the Hollywood golden boy who burned bright and fast, then came Tom Cruise, and he represented something totally different from the others. Tom was all about mainstream success. He had undeniable star power that you just couldn't ignore. He was the kind of attraction that happens when two absolutely massive celebrities occupy the same space at the exact same moment in time and history. He was magnetic in a way that's really hard to describe to anyone who didn't live through that specific era of movies and cinema. Cher was intrigued and fascinated. She was drawn to his charisma, his physical presence, his unquestionable talent, and the way he could command and own a room just by walking into it. Tom saw Cher as an equal in the celebrity stratosphere, in that really high level of fame. He didn't see her as below him or less than him. He wasn't intimidated at all by her success. Instead, he genuinely respected everything she had achieved across music, television, and film. They moved in similar circles of famous people. They attended the same exclusive, fancy events that normal people never get invited to. And the chemistry between them became the subject of tabloid speculation and gossip for weeks and weeks. Entertainment reporters noticed how their eyes would lock and stare at each other from across rooms. They seemed to communicate without even using words. Their connection was brief but really intense. It was fueled by mutual admiration and the electricity that comes from two famous people truly understanding each other's world in ways that ordinary, regular people simply cannot comprehend or relate to. There was no performance or acting between them. They could be authentically and completely themselves because they both lived in the same rarefied atmosphere, that thin air at the very top where only the biggest celebrities exist. What made their time together different from her other relationships was that it was purely about attraction and respect. There was no deep emotional need involved. There was no searching for healing or redemption from past relationships and past pain. It was simpler and somehow more honest than that. They were just two successful people at the absolute height of their powers who found each other attractive and decided to act on that impulse and feeling. They didn't have complicated expectations or hidden agendas or secret motives. Cher has said in interviews, though she never directly said Tom's name out loud, that some connections are simply meant to exist in a moment. They're meant to shine bright like a sparkler and then fade away gracefully and naturally. She talked about how important it is to recognize what different relationships offer you at different times in your life. Each one serves a purpose. Tom went on to become one of the biggest movie stars in the entire world, and Cher celebrated his success genuinely and sincerely. She had no bitterness or regret or the jealousy that sometimes pops up in the entertainment world when someone else does well. Their relationship lasted only a few weeks total, but it represented something really crucial and important. It showed Cher's freedom to make choices based purely on what she wanted, not on what the industry dictated or told her to do. and not based on what would give good press or look good in the media. It was a moment of pure agency and control over her own life. David Geffen, the music mogul who understood the business side of her heart. Then there was David Geffen, and he wasn't an artist in the traditional sense of playing music or acting. But he was an artist of a completely different kind. He was a visionary, someone who understood music and entertainment at their very core and foundation. He could see patterns and possibilities and opportunities where other people only saw boring numbers and spreadsheets. Cher met David during one of the most transformative and changing periods of her entire career. This was when she was navigating and trying to survive the treacherous and dangerous politics of the music industry. She was desperately trying to maintain and keep creative control over her own destiny and her own projects. This was a time when many record companies wanted to mold her and shape her. They wanted to redirect her vision toward what they thought would sell better and make more money. They didn't care about her artistic vision. David respected her mind, and not just her talent or her beauty, but her raw intelligence and business acumen and smarts. He saw how incredibly hard she worked. He saw how much she genuinely cared about the integrity of her projects and keeping them authentic. He saw how deeply she understood the music business and all its traps and pitfalls. Their connection was intellectual and sensual at the same time. It was a rare combination that doesn't happen very often at all between two people. They shared late nights together talking about music, about art, about the future of the entire industry, about their dreams and hopes. David treated Cher as a partner in thought, as someone whose opinion really mattered beyond just her ability to sell records or generate marketing campaigns and buzz. He actually listened to her. He valued what she had to say. Their relationship was sophisticated and complicated, much like David himself was as a person. He was a man of immense power and money, but also considerable emotional depth and feeling. He was protective of Cher in ways that went way beyond just romantic interest and attraction. He genuinely and truly wanted to help her succeed. He wanted to see her thrive and do well on her own terms, the way she wanted to. Colleagues and people on the inside noted that David championed and fought for her work fiercely against internal industry skepticism and doubt. He defended her choices when other people questioned them and criticized them. And he gave her space and room to grow artistically without trying to control her direction or tell her what to do. The relationship didn't last long. Term in a romantic way. It evolved and moved past that phase into something perhaps even more valuable: genuine mutual respect between two people. Years later, David spoke about Cher with obvious admiration and warmth in his voice and his words. He credited her with helping him understand the emotional weight of music. She taught him the way art could move people way beyond just profit margins and quarterly reports and money. Cher, in turn, learned from David how to navigate boardrooms and business deals without sacrificing her artistic soul and her integrity. She learned how to be a savvy, smart businesswoman without becoming cold or hard or mean. It was a meeting of two minds that transformed both of them in fundamental and deep ways. Richie Sambora, the rock and roller who gave her passion and fire, then came Richie Sambora, and he was a true rock musician through and through. He was part of Bon Jovi's meteoric and amazing rise in the 1980s when they dominated huge stadiums and defined an entire generation's soundtrack and music. He had charisma, tons of talent, and that rocker's edge that Cher had always found deeply and incredibly appealing. Unlike Tom Cruise's Holly, wood polish and shine, or David Geffen's intellectual sophistication and smarts, Richie represented raw musical talent and genuine artistic rebellion against the establishment and the system. He didn't care at all about the machinery of celebrity or maintaining a perfect image for the public. He cared about playing music, about feeling things deeply, about the pure energy of rock and roll, and about living life authentically and honestly. Cher was attracted to that authenticity in profound and deep ways. It spoke to something inside her, When they met each other, there was an immediate spark between them, like a fire starting. They were two musicians who understood the road and touring. They understood the performances and the shows. They understood the all-consuming nature of artistic life that most regular people never comprehend or understand. They had incredible nights together, sharing music and stories. They had the kind of connection that only happens between people who live for their art, who bleed their passion into every single note they play. Richie saw past Cher's image and costume and makeup. He saw the real woman underneath all of that, underneath all the costumes and makeup, and the carefully constructed persona she showed the world. He wasn't intimidated or scared at all by her success. He genuinely respected it and admired what she'd accomplished. They would talk for hours and hours about music, about philosophy and ideas, about life on the road, about the exhaustion and the exhilaration of touring around the world. He taught her things about playing guitar and about songwriting that enhanced her own artistry. It expanded her understanding of how music actually worked and functioned. The relationship was brief but incredibly intense. It was fueled by passion and genuine artistic connection that burned bright like a fire. People who knew them both personally said it was one of the rare times when Cher seemed to let her guard down completely. She was unguarded and real and open. She was vulnerable with Richie in ways she rarely allowed herself to be with anyone else in her life. Though the relationship didn't develop into something long-term that lasted for years, the mark it left on her was indelible and lasting. It couldn't be erased. Richie went on to have his own complicated journey through life and love with different people, and Cher moved forward with new experiences and new connections of her own. But they maintained a respect for each other that never, ever faded away or died. She would reference and mention their time together in interviews years later. She wouldn't say his name directly, but she spoke in ways that revealed the depth of what they had shared together and how profoundly and deeply it mattered to her. Russell Crowe, the actor with fierce talent and intensity. Then there was Russell Crowe, an actor with fierce talent and an intensity that just couldn't be ignored or overlooked. Russell came into Cher's life during a period when she was still actively acting and performing at the highest levels possible. He was intense, incredibly talented, and he brought a raw power to every single role he played. He never phoned it in or did the minimum. He always gave everything. Russell had an almost dangerous energy about him, a kind of controlled chaos that drew people to him like a magnet. You couldn't help but be pulled toward him. Cher recognized in him the same commitment to craft and art that she possessed herself. She saw the same refusal to accept mediocrity or just being okay. He wanted excellence. He wasn't playing a role or pretending in his personal life. He was authentically himself for better or for worse, with all his complicated edges and rough spots showing. Their connection was about recognizing that shared intensity between them. It was about that refusal to compromise or play by Hollywood's arbitrary and random rules that don't always make sense. Russell saw Cher as a true artist, as someone who had proven herself across multiple mediums, music, film, and television. He refused to let anyone diminish her or make her seem less important based on anyone's limited expectations or preconceptions about what her capabilities were. They spent time together during a period that was rarely documented by paparazzi or tabloid magazines. They existed somewhat outside the public eye, in a way that very few celebrities can actually manage to do. It's really hard to have privacy when you're that famous. What emerged and grew between them was a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine attraction that they both recognized and felt. Russell was protective of Cher in a way that felt different from the other men in her life. He wasn't possessive or controlling, but he was genuinely protective of her well-being and her safety. He valued her opinions deeply and seriously. He encouraged her artistic risks without any fear. And he made her feel safe enough to be truly herself without pretense or performance or putting on a show. The relationship lasted several months before their increasingly demanding schedules and personal lives pulled them in different directions inevitably. Sometimes life just gets in the way. But Russell remained fond of Cher even after they split. He spoke about her years later with obvious affection and genuine admiration in interviews with reporters. He never betrayed her confidences or secrets. He never gossiped about their time together. He never sold stories to tabloid magazines for money, even though he probably could have. That discretion, that keeping of secrets, was itself a gift in an industry that is completely obsessed with exposure and revealing everything. In an industry where secrets are like currency and leverage and power, Russell kept theirs sacred and protected. He guarded their privacy. Cher appreciated that respect more than she could ever express publicly or say out loud. It meant the world to her. Josh Lucas, the actor who gave her hope for new beginnings finally. There was Josh Lucas, and even at this late stage of her life, he gave her something special. Josh came into Cher's life more recently than all the others. He represented a completely different chapter in her long and complicated romantic history and story. He was talented, grounded, intelligent, and he brought a kind of stability that was genuinely refreshing and new. Unlike some of the passionate, tumultuous, chaotic connections she had experienced with other men over the decades, Josh represented something quieter, but it was equally profound and meaningful in its own way. He represented the possibility of deep partnership without ego getting in the way. He represented love without games or tricks or manipulation. He saw Cher's age, the fact that she was getting older, not as a limitation or as something to hide or be ashamed of. Instead, he saw it as part of her beauty and power. He respected the journey she had been on, the incredible life she had lived, and the hard-won wisdom she had accumulated and gathered over nearly 8 decades of living. Josh was someone who could love Cher the woman, the real person beneath all the costumes and wigs. He didn't just love Cher the icon or the legend or the brand name. Their connection happened late in her life, that's true. But it felt timely and meaningful in ways that genuinely surprised her. She didn't expect to feel this way at her age. What made Josh fundamentally and basically different from all the others was that he represented acceptance rather than transformation and change. With him, Cher didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. She didn't need to justify her choices or defend her past decisions and mistakes. She could simply be herself, exactly as she was. They shared quiet moments together that meant just as much, in different ways, as the passionate nights with other men had meant to her at different times in her life. Josh understood intuitively, without being told, that love evolves and changes over time. He understood that at 79 years old, what Cher valued and needed was different from what she valued at 30 or 40 or 50 years old. People's needs change. He gave her companionship without possession or ownership. He gave her support without control or manipulation. He gave her respect without conditions or requirements. Though their relationship was more recent and still unfolding and developing, it taught Cher something essential and important. It taught her that connection at any age is valuable and worthwhile. It taught her that intimacy and closeness doesn't have an expiration date stamped on it. It taught her that life contains multiple chapters of romance, not just one. Josh helped her see clearly that some chapters of life are just beginning and starting, not ending and closing. Looking back on 7 men, these 7 men shaped and molded Cher's journey in ways that go far beyond tabloid headlines or public scandal or internet gossip and rumors. Each one represented something different and unique. Some represented passion, some represented respect, some represented growth, some represented authenticity, some represented partnership, and some represented simple human connection. Each one contributed something significant and important to the woman and artist she became over her long and remarkable career. None of them broke her completely, though some of them hurt her deeply and caused her pain. All of them mattered in important and meaningful ways. At 79 years old now, Cher can look back on these connections not with regret or shame or embarrassment, but with gratitude and understanding and wisdom. They were part of her story, part of the tapestry of her life. They were part of what made her the icon that the world knows and loves today. She didn't define herself through these relationships and these men, but they were threads in the larger tapestry of her life, woven in throughout. Looking back now, she sees not mistakes or failures, but lessons and growth, and moments of genuine human connection in an industry that is often devoid of authenticity and realness. But now we want to hear from you, the audience. Which of these relationships surprised you the most? Did any of them shock you? Do you think Cher was brave to share her heart so openly with these men? Which man do you think had the greatest impact on her life and her art? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. We want to know what you think. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, because more intimate celebrity stories just like this one are coming very soon. We have so much more to share with you,